Hello and welcome everyone to day one of our virtual retreat here for projectors. I hope you've managed to find the room. You are welcome to use the chat feature to say hi, but otherwise, please keep yourself on mute so that we have a nice clean recording for our friends that will be watching the recording and are unable to join us live. So, first of all, let's get started with getting a little bit grounded so that we can open the space in retreat style as best as we can, despite the fact that we are meeting virtually. Hopefully, you've got your environment sorted and you're making sure that you're cozy and comfy, maybe with a cup of tea or some nice water, just something nearby to make you feel a little bit more in retreat vibe to join us today in this session. So I just want to first of all get into the housekeeping, but I think we'll ground first. So get yourself into a comfortable seat. A seat is preferable because we're going to be doing an active session, so that would be ideal. Closing over the eyes, making sure that the body is feeling supported, and just turning your gaze inward, checking in with yourself, how you're feeling today, tonight, this afternoon, whatever time zone you're in, whenever you're actually watching this replay. Just acknowledging where you're at, acknowledging all of the pieces that needed to come into play in order for you to sit here in this moment, to be present in this space, and to receive what you've come to receive today, even if you're not sure what that is. And placing your hands onto your physical body, somewhere on the heart space or the belly, wherever you can connect with the movement of your breath. And as you place your hands, really registering the sensation of the breath moving in and out of the body, not judging the breath, not forcing it in any way, just simply observing your body breathing just the way it was designed to. Noticing if your breath is a little bit higher in your chest, if your breath is feeling forced, shallow, and just gently coaxing the breath into a deeper point in the belly, creating some softness there to receive the breath. As you exhale, breathe out through the mouth and letting out any sound of release, anything that feels natural, or maybe it feels unnatural, but it feels good after you decide to do it. And just setting an intention here for the next 45 to 60 minutes that we have together to bring your full presence, to bring a spirit of openness, to put the mind aside. We're really moving into this intention for the next 3 days. We want to really bring the mind out of this experience as much as possible. And that's why today we're starting with the theme of unlearning. We've learned the wrong way, the homogenized way of doing so many things, not just as humans, but also as projectors. So come with a beginner's mind, a Zen mind, so that you can receive something new, something fresh, so that you can disrupt a little bit your attachments to how you think things should be. We're going to debunk some myths, and we're going to give you some really practical tools to walk the projector walk. As Ra says, You can't be half a projector. It's like being pregnant. You are or you aren't. You're either full projector or you're not a projector. So in these 3 days, if you haven't entertained living as a projector full time yet, I invite you to explore it in the next 3 days. And it begins with surrender. We're surrendering the mind, we're unlearning, we're deconditioning the physical vessel, the vehicle. We're going to recalibrate to what is the correct signature for a projector. And we're going to emerge from this experience reborn into your birthright, into who you came here to be. We're exploring the potential for breakthrough. So, with that little fire lit in your heart, as you feel ready, you can return back to the space, and we're going to dive in to today's unlearning. So let's get into the housekeeping as well. There's practical matters that have to go into this beautiful experience over the next 3 days. First of all, I want to thank you for giving your time to this. I know that this is a free event, but your time and as a projector, your attention is certainly not free. So I don't take that lightly. My intention is to give you a high level of value despite the low monetary investment because I respect and appreciate your energy and your time that you're giving. So do that also for yourself. Don't treat this like a free experience. Treat these 3 days as though you've invested financially in them. Show up fully, and there will be breakthroughs here for you each day. That's what we're here for. All right, we're going to stay muted during the recordings. As I've mentioned, this is just the decorum for our time together during these sessions. You are welcome to use the chat as a projector. Myself and also many of you, whether you recognize it or not, we are very, very prone to distraction. So chats can be very, very distracting, and you can really get pulled out of the actual core focus and reason of the session and why you're here. So just be discerning when you're participating in the chat. Don't start lengthy conversations over there. Just make sure that you are here focused on what you are here to receive. But of course, you're also welcome to connect. Be ready to receive. Check in with your posture. How have you positioned yourself for this experience? Have you really carved out the time? If not, don't attend live. Just come into the recording when you can actually create the 60 minutes for yourself to really receive fully. You know, if you're in your car, if you're moving somewhere else, this is not the time for these sessions. We want to create as close to a true retreat atmosphere as possible. And I can't do that for you at home. I need to trust you to be able to do that for yourself. Make sure that you have a journal, some sort of note paper and pens to write things down. We are projectors here. We love learning. There will be things to learn. So I have to respect that you're projectors and you will want to take some notes. So just make sure you have those things available for you. Don't get too trapped into the mind of needing to learn anything so much in these 3 days. I want you to just take it in. And make sure, as I've kind of mentioned, keep a dedicated time and space for your retreat, even if you're only watching the recordings. Really cultivate this experience for yourself. Set some boundaries, put some things in place, inform who you need to inform what you are doing in these 3 days so that you can really make sure you get the most out of this immersion. If you do this experience piecemeal, you know, one replay per week, it's not going to land necessarily in the same way. So as best you can, give yourself the 3 days of immersion. It really does do wonders for a projector's nervous system and our receptivity. There will be daily homework. I hate calling it homework, but there's no better way to really call it that. It's going to be work that you're doing at home in between our sessions. It will really deeply supplement what we're doing in the live sessions and masterclasses. Each day after we've had the live session, you will receive an email. This will contain the recording for the session we've just done, so you can rewatch it, or if you haven't seen it at all, that's for those people that can't attend live. And you will also receive a worksheet. There's not a lot to do, but most of it is deeply contemplative. But I do encourage you to participate fully and do the homework exercises in between the sessions, ideally before you attend the next session the following day. And there will also be an audio resource. I encourage you to do this meditation twice per day, if not at least once per day. And finally, the theme for these 3 days, we have day 1 is unlearning, day 2, recalibration, and day 3, rebirth. So we're going to get started with unlearning. Unlearning, we're going to be going into deconditioning, particularly the myths, because this is a big hot topic out there for all aura types, but in particular, there are some really important emphasis that needs to be placed on deconditioning for projectors, and we're going to be talking about that today. But even more importantly is the role of conditioning for projectors. And this piece is something a little bit different that you're not necessarily receiving out there in the mainstream content. Day 2, recalibration, is also a reclamation. What are projectors? We're going to talk about 9-centeredness and the mechanics of operating correctly. And day 3, our rebirth, this is breakthrough. This is the real invitation that is waiting for you on the other side of this experience. So with all of that said, let's get started with our slide presentation, because we are projectors after all. We do like a little bit of school vibe. So we'll just pull up the first slide. So I've intentionally called this day unlearning because deconditioning, it's a word that we need to respect because it's the correct keynote and terminology and language of human design, which I'm very determined to respect Ra's work, that he brought this knowledge forward. If you don't know, Ra Uru Hu received the human design system as a transmission, not as human design, but that is how he has pulled all of this knowledge together that he received. And it's become the human design system that we know and hopefully love, or we're at least getting to know as projectors. One hallmark of what he taught was around deconditioning. And deconditioning, it's a little bit of a tricky word because, particularly with a medical background, if we talk about deconditioning, it's like you're getting less healthy, you are losing condition. But in the human design world, conditioning is what we are sort of trying to really be aware of. And I think, unfortunately, in the human design world, we have really been shown or led to believe that conditioning is bad. And actually, I'm going to turn that completely on its head today. And conditioning is a requirement of participating in life. It's what we do with it that's really important. And the deconditioning process has also been linked to this 7-year span. And this is a little bit of a myth as well. And I'm going to be speaking more into this, but it's a controversial topic. I love controversial topics in design. They are my favorites. So if you are into the controversy, you're in the right place. So let's get straight into this 7-year story. So I think one of the major things holding projectors back right from the beginning is this very linear construct of, okay, I've just found out I'm a projector, and I've just found out that that means that I'm really like a completely different species to everybody else. That's a big deal. That's a big challenge. And I've found out that in order to become more like myself, I need to decondition and unlearn and get rid of all the things that have led me in the wrong areas to be unprojector-like. And Ra really put a a a punctuation point on this by saying it takes 7 years. And this is a very controversial idea in human design. It's been disputed by many, many people. It's held very strongly by many, many people. And I've got a mixed opinion about it. But mostly, I don't think it's strictly true. Ra said this because he believed that in order for the full cellular turnover of our entire physical vehicle to happen, takes 7 years. The reality is each different type of cell that we have turns over at different rates. We have cells that turn over very, very rapidly, and we have cells that turn over very, very slowly. And so the 7 years is kind of a little bit of a random number. 7 in numerology is very significant. It also relates to the Saturnian cycle, and that's related to 7 years. So there is some truth in it. There is definitely probably some basis for it. I think if you talk to a lot of people in human design, they definitely feel a transition at the 7 year point through their deconditioning process. But essentially, what it means is pretty much from the moment that you learn your human design, that's the first step. And then you begin deconditioning. But in reality, it depends how actively you are participating in that process. So if you learn you're a projector and you essentially do nothing with that but live in bitterness for the next 7 years, you haven't deconditioned anything. Deconditioning is both an intentional and a very passive process, but you do have to participate in it, even just through intention. You can't force deconditioning because the magic of deconditioning is it's something that happens when we actually surrender the mind. We say, okay, the mind is not running the show now. So if you're thinking about or like cheering yourself on or celebrating, say, oh, I've done a really good job with my deconditioning, that's your mind telling you that. The deconditioning process will show up in the reduction of resistance in your life. As life starts to smooth out, this is the evidence that you are deconditioning. And the other good and bad news is I've discovered that this is a rinse and repeat process. Deconditioning is not linear. It is not like once you start, you go along train tracks and then you're done. You will have eras and seasons where you are going through varying themes and deepening layers in your deconditioning process. And it's beautiful. I fully believe that deconditioning never ends. It doesn't complete at 7 years. And that's because we are being conditioned each and every day, each and every hour, even when we sleep. So you must have an intention to bring awareness to deconditioning and active participation in your deconditioning. It is like healthy maintenance for our vehicle and for our process for any type, but especially for projectors because we are extra spongy. We have a very, very absorptive vehicle because we need that to sense into everything around us. That's really important for our process and what we do as guides. So, as part of that, just like if you're living in a polluted environment, you are absorbing those pollutants on a daily basis. It's so important that you are regularly detoxifying those pollutants so that your vehicle is clean and clear so that it's actually functioning optimally. The other myth is, and I got stuck in this for a little while, is that we think that conditioning is only occurring in our open centers, in the areas of our body graph that are white. This is very true, but not the full truth. I actually love that truth is coming up as a theme, just as a slight segue. The timing of this retreat was very, very intentional because we're moving into a new era. Pluto has moved into Aquarius. It had a little bit of a retrograde into Capricorn. Pluto is about to move into Gate 41, the initiation codon, and this is the same place that Pluto was in 1781 when projectors basically came into being. We are really entering a whole new rebirth for projectors. But why this little moment in time is particularly of interest, is of particular interest, is right now in these few days, we actually have Pluto and the Sun sitting together in the same location of gate 60. And this is Pluto's last time in gate 60. It's sitting in line 6. It's about to move into gate 41. Don't worry if you don't understand all this, but it is very interesting. And Pluto is all about truth. And Pluto is bringing some truths as Pluto moves into the initiation codon. We are going to see some real upset happening. We're already seeing it in the world right now. And what I love that the sun and Pluto is together, it's like the sun is illuminating that truth even more strongly before Pluto comes in and takes the reins or takes the steering wheel and starts driving this vehicle. So stay tuned. We are in a really powerful time for projectors to really wake up, calibrate, and get on task. So that's why I'm also doing this retreat at this time. There's no mistakes. There's all method in the madness. So let's get back to our conditioning in our defined centers. Our open centers, all the white in our chart, are our areas that we go to school in life. It is where we are really open, like receivers, to actually receive inputs. It's where we're here to learn. But what can happen is, particularly from a young age, where you have definition, the colored centers in your chart, you can still be pulled into the not self themes of those areas because the expression of them, even in childhood, might not be welcomed in your family, by your parents, in your school system. So you can still be pulled out of what is natural for you, and you can be conditioned away from your definition as well. So make sure that you are covering both bases. For sure, the more powerful conditioning can be sitting in that openness because that's where you're most vulnerable. But you may have actually been pulled off your definition at a very, very young age and not even be aware that you have lived out the not self theme of your definition. And that to me is the most dangerous part because I believe that our most important anchor in our process is our definition, especially for projectors. It really is the only thing that is consistent for us, that in the world out there that we are constantly getting conditioned by, and we're designed to be absorbing so that we can take all those ingredients and see and guide where things need to happen. We are really, really required to have that anchor somewhere because every day, otherwise, we don't know where we're based, and that is in our definition. So you need to really make friends with your definition in your chart, even more so than your openness. So you've got that steady anchor because the openness is going to be there each and every day in different ways. It's nothing to kind of hang your hat on. You're here to learn through that, make mistakes through that. Your definition is your safety. Okay, let's talk about conditioning forces. Where is this conditioning coming from? Now, there is three major conditioning forces, and these are the other. So that's any other person or animal for that matter. Our mammal friends, our dogs, our cats, they are five-centered beings. They have designs as well, and they have channels and they have gates, and they can also interact with our auras and actually change our conditioning as well for positive and negative ways. So any other aura that you're engaging with will have a conditioning effect on you, just as you're having a conditioning effect on the other as well. The next one is transits. We're going to be looking at these in today's presentation. Transits I'll go into once we land on that slide, but this is the movement of the heavenly bodies, the planets. And the last one is a little bit more of a mysterious one. This is getting into the real deep cosmology within human design, and this is the neutrino stream. What is the neutrino stream? It is essentially the ocean of consciousness. Now, it was thought that neutrinos were basically not real because they didn't have mass. Thanks to quantum physics, we have now proven that neutrinos exist and they do have mass, but they are tiny, 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 tiny. We cannot see them, but we are bathed in a neutrino ocean each and every day. The neutrino stream, I'm not going to go into in this particular presentation Today, it's really a little bit too deep for where I want to take you. So that will be something that we definitely dive into within the Phoenix Collective membership, where we have a lot more time and spaciousness to dive into these deeper areas and add a little bit more depth to things that we're going to be covering in these days on the retreat. So stay tuned for that. So we are here to be conditioned. We are here to be conditioned. Don't get stuck on the deconditioning train. It is a necessary thing that you have to be aware of as part of maintenance of your process, cleansing and clearing and recycling through that process regularly. But be open to conditioning. That's what it's all about. And it's how we learn and we gain our wisdom. And as projectors, that is what we're here to do. We are here to learn. We're here to master systems. We're here to gain wisdom through that learning process so that we can most efficiently guide the others that simply are not designed to see what we can see. So, unlearning. The first step that I think is really, really important for every projector is to decondition your authority. And what does that mean for all of us? It's stopping running your life from the mind. And it sounds easy to say, and it is extremely difficult for us to do. Projectors are naturally intellectual. And particularly if you felt quite unrecognized and unsafe and abnormal and a little bit odd when you were growing up, which many projectors did, you may have then felt unsafe in your body and started to bring your awareness even more up into your head as a strategy, as a survival mechanism, as I need to figure things out to keep my body safe. And that's really brought you very, very far away from what your true authority is, which is within your physical vehicle. Our mind personality is like a construct. We really want to focus back on this physical vehicle. That's where your authority lives. And that is true for every projector, whether you are an emotional projector, a splenic projector, an ego projector, a mental projector, a self-projected projector. And that's the other thing. We have the most variety of all the different types of authority within one aura type. And this is where I go back to the danger of homogenizing material for projectors. Be very, very cautious. This is something that I'm completely debunking within the Phoenix Collective. We are going to be expanding in our diversity and our uniqueness as projectors within that space, not contracting it into a homogenized norm projector. Doesn't exist. The more unique, the more diverse we are, the more powerful we are for the collective, which is the whole point. So, mind is not your authority. And this takes a long time to begin to unpack and undo. If in doubt, as a projector, the first answer is always no, especially early in your process. As you are tuning yourself in to your true authority, say no more so that you can actually clear out the noise, slow down the decision-making process a little bit so that you can start to discern what your authority is saying. You can start to be more present in the decision-making process to actually see the result of that yes, the result of that no. How did your body respond to that? Was there a peace, a sense of success within your vehicle? Or did you feel a little bit bitter and resentful? This is our signpost as a projector. Bitterness is your signpost that you are out of alignment, that you are off track for what is correct for you, and you need to re-navigate back across. And that's just taking a decision differently the next time. We must break up with responding. We have all been trained as generators. We have all been trained to respond. And this is not the correct way for a projector. And in fact, if you really dial into it, you will often feel quite bitter and resentful when you are required to respond. It just doesn't calibrate well to how we are here to operate. Yes, you can say that we respond to invitations, but I'm not talking about that. This is where you're basically being put on demand in the moment, like a sacral generator. We are not here for that. What I want you to reconsider and recalibrate to is get familiar with recognition rather than thinking about the waiting that we do. So break up with responding, think or feel, am I being recognized here? If you feel that you're being recognized, then your authority can kind of speak, and now you've got a decision to make. If you don't feel recognized, then there's really no decision to make. It's a no. Because if a projector says yes without recognition, then it's going to be an incorrect invitation. It's a really important clue for us, and it's something that gets left out a lot in our process with strategy and authority. We're just all told, wait for the invitation. And projectors are so eager to guide, to help, to fix. Telling us to wait when we see a problem plain as day is so frustrating. And yet our theme is not frustration, but it really is very, very difficult for us to pull back from that because we have this very natural drive. That's why you need to just pull back enough and go, am I being recognized as a projector? Not as a generator that I'm going to get in and do all that work. Am I being recognized for what I see, for the way that I've maybe mastered a topic and I can guide someone to do something more efficiently? These are really important clues for projector recognition. But the most important recognition begins with yourself. You need to take the decision first to recognize that you are a projector. That is the first step, because without recognizing and owning that you are a projector, you will continually trip into people pleasing and saying yes and thinking, I'll just make a better decision next time, or I'll just start being a projector next week. I'll just start saying no next week. I'll put those boundaries in place next month, in the next job. Can't work that way. It's just going to really degrade you energetically. It's going to bring that bitterness and it's going to delay your success. So, yes, wait for the invitation, but wait for the recognition first. Am I being recognized? Is my way of operating being honored? Is my need for rest being honored? Those things are really important. So let's look at these conditioning forces now. The first one we have is the other. And just to keep this really simple, I'm showing you some body graphs in these next couple of slides. And this body graph, hopefully you can look at this and know which one's the projector. It's not required. You don't need to be a human design expert to be in any of my spaces. You are here to learn. So how do we find a projector? A projector will always have an open sacral center. So this individual here is a projector. And this individual over here is definitely not a projector. This individual can only be a sacral generator because that sacral center is colored in. Additionally, we can say that this individual is actually a manifesting generator, which is a subtype of generator because they have a motor connection. The sacral is a motor. This channel is connecting to the throat. So a generator that has a motor connecting to the throat becomes a manifesting generator, meaning that motor is driving them to be a little bit more rapid and skip steps compared to a regular generator, but that's the only real difference. So what I want to demonstrate with these two body graphs sitting next to each other is you can see that there's a contrast in the areas that are colored in and the areas that are open. Now, a couple of interesting things and a couple of misconceptions. So I used to think this is actually my personal chart because ethically I can use mine in my own work. I don't want to use someone else's that might be here and didn't give me permission. So this is my body graph. And every single projector body graph is going to be different, and they're not always easy to see projector body graphs because, like I said, with the authority, there's lots of different authorities, so there's lots of different representations of a projector body graph, but always this sacral will be open. Now, in many ways, I actually have a reasonable amount of definition as a projector. There are projectors that have even more centers defined than I do. There are projectors that have even way less than I do. They might only have 2 centers defined and they've got a lot of openness. And one thing that I incorrectly believed when I first started in my journey is that I must have more openness as a projector than a generator. Like generators must be more defined. This is completely not true. This is a generator here who you could argue is maybe even more prone to conditioning than I am, because this generator has more open centers in his chart. And there you go. So the other thing that you want to pay attention to is, yes, projectors maybe are not energy types, but we can still have motors. The sacral just happens to be the strongest motor. But me, I'm a lucky projector. I've got two motors here. I've got a solar plexus motor, which that emotional motor is pretty strong. It's so strong that were it defined over here, this generator actually becomes an emotional manifesting generator. Here I have a root definition as well, and the root is another motor. So this is another misconception about projectors, is that projectors don't have motors, but we do. We don't have sacral energy, but we have these motors. So we do have that capacity to drive and get things done, but we need to operate in a different way because we don't have that sacral energy. So what I wanted to really pull out from this is when these two humans get together, where this person has openness or whiteness and this projector has definition, that definition is going to really affect this openness. It's going to condition this openness. And that openness is going to amplify the qualities of this center by 200%. For me, the most interesting and kind of volcanic way this can happen is with the solar plexus, because that's our emotional center. So this is a part of my work that I talk about quite a bit, is this polarity between the emotional authorities and the non-emotionals. And it's very volcanic. It produces some of the greatest excitement of life, is this emotional dynamic between human beings. But this is what can tend to happen, is when we're in relationship with another, we are actually getting conditioned by their definition and they're getting conditioned by our definition. So when we're with somebody else, we can feel parts of them and think that they belong to us. And that can be very dangerous for projectors. And the worst place that happens is with the sacral definition. And that's where we can sometimes think that we have all this energy, but it's just because we're borrowing it from the generator sitting next to us. And so we can feel like if we're in a social situation, we've got a lot of energy. And then when we unplug from that sacral energy and we go home, we are exhausted because it was borrowed. It was not ours. And so we were running on something that we were basically just getting from somebody else. And once that connection was broken, we remember again that we are non-sacral beings and we're projectors. So that's a really simple and obvious example. And this is happening daily on the planet. Projectors are being so conditioned by sacral energy. And that's why we're out there hustling and working and trying to be generators. And if generators were the slaves, as Ra said, projectors are the super slaves. We will do it better. And that's not necessarily a good thing. That's why we're all bitter and burned out. Something interesting is we can also give channels to other people. So for example, this person does not have any connection whatsoever between their ajna, that kind of organizational center, and their throat. This person, myself, I do, and I have this consistently available. So on a daily basis, even though this is a genius to freak line, some things that will come out of my mouth will be genius and other things will just be like, what was that? And that's my spontaneous voice. That's a natural part of my design that I've had to learn to love and honor and respect. This person over here might grab that quality when they're with me. So they might have these really interesting insights and cryptic things to share that they won't necessarily have available if they're not around me getting a little bit of my 4323. So it's very interesting to look at these interplays, but we don't want to do it from the mind. It's something to just be aware of. It's not like you start hyper analyzing who you're with and how it changes you, because the other is not the most strong conditioning force in our life. We're going to get to that one. That's more so the transits and the neutrino stream. So I want to show you another nuance of the other, and this is the connection. So when you are with someone else, what actually comes through is what I like to call the third wheel. So you essentially end up with a third person in the relationship, and it really produces its own bioform, the interaction of your two bioforms coming together, you get this third person. And this can be a really powerful tool to understand what aspects of the design are dominating and what aspects are compromising within an interaction. This is quite advanced knowledge, and it's not something you need on the day to day. But what I wanted to show you was when we put both of those body graphs together and fuse them in a connection chart, this is the result. And it just shows you in summary that projector, every time they are with that person, they are getting sacral definition. Be careful. They are also getting ego will-centered definition. Be careful. This one in particular, both these humans are going to feel like they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof when they're with that other person. And as soon as they're not, they lose that feeling. These sorts of strong sensations can start creating false codependencies and can get really, really messy within relationship. So these are just things to be aware of. And like I said, this is the playground of life. This is not to be avoided. It's just something to pour your awareness into, and why it is extremely important for projectors to really know your definition and have that anchor at all times. And if you're noticing qualities within yourself that change day to day, know that they are transitory. Play with them, have fun with them while they're there, but know that there might be a hangover when that connection is over or that transit disappears. And that's where we get into the transits. What are the transits? The transits are the heavenly bodies that are moving around through space. And what they're essentially doing is they are creating these big filters of the neutrino stream. So we are getting conditioned and influenced. The whole program is getting run through this neutrino stream, this consciousness ocean. And depending on where these heavenly bodies are within the sky, it's going to determine what the resulting flavor is that is going to then seep through on the other side. So they're like these big filters. And so when we talk about the transits, we're talking about the position of all of the planets, including the moon, and we also talk about the north and south node, the sun and the earth, and all the other planets that we know. And we're talking about their placement within these gates, within what we call the rave mandala. So again, you don't need to know all this terminology, but it's good to know where this comes from, particularly as projectors, because we like to kind of know where things come from. We like to know how things work. So this is a little map. I just did this actually a couple of hours before this particular session that we're having live. So you can see the date there and the time. And this again is my body graph, and this is a transit chart that I generated. And as you can see, as I mentioned, super fun. This is Pluto down the bottom here. Pluto is sitting in gate 60, in the last line of gate 60. Pluto is ready to jump overboard. And that will be happening on the 30th of January, which is why we are opening the Phoenix Collective membership on the 30th of January. So that's going to be very fun. It'll be jumping into the initiation codon, initiation. And up here, we've got the sun in gate 62. So they're like playing together in the same gate. And this does happen with the transits. It's very rare that this happens because Pluto is such a slow mover. So there's interesting energies around. And this is what the transits do. They bring these really interesting themes. The interesting part of as well with the transits is that they all have different lengths of span, depending on how quickly or slowly that heavenly body in particular is orbiting or moving. So, for example, with the moon and with the sun and the earth, these all move relatively quickly. So within a couple of days, the sun and the earth are changing gates every few days. So we can get very different flavors from day to day with these bodies moving through these different gates, because each gate has a theme, each planet has a personality, and then the neutrino stream is going through this, and then we're receiving it through our bioform, which is creating a filter as well. So as you can see, it creates an immense amount of diverse experience on the planet. And one thing that this really opened up for me was an immense amount of compassion for every human walking around, because honestly, you can't really empathize with anyone because you cannot know what is going on in their shoes because they are having a really unique experience to you. It just depends how open they are to receiving it fully. But we are all having such a diverse range of experiences because of all of these levels of filtering that we're all receiving, and we're like the final filter. So it's really fun to watch the transits play out in more global themes because that's what's actually happening. And these transits are part of the global cycle shifts, which is something else that I love to delve into within this body of work of human design. So as you can see, today, in this moment, in fact, probably still, I have a lot of things defined that my actual chart, my birth body bioform, my birth body graph does not have. So this is my design. But right now, this is my design. So I've got head definition that I don't normally have. I've got a defined sacral, danger, danger, danger. Like I've got energy that it will go away. And I have to be aware that I've got a projector vehicle that is not designed to operate on that sacral energy, but I can borrow it. And so I just need to be aware that I do need to be getting rest and making sure that I'm looking after myself during this transit when I've got sacral energy impressioning on me. Fun thing is I've also got some splenic definition. So the spleen is all about the ability to sort of hold on to things or let them go. And when you have an open spleen, as I usually do, I can have it, the not self theme of this is the inability to let things go. You hold on to things that are no longer good for you. At the moment, I can let lots go. I'm letting it all go. It's fine. I don't feel like I need to cling to anything. And then I'll go back and I'll be like, oh no, I have this natural thing within me that I have to kind of not override, but respect and go, okay, this is part of where I can be conditioned. So I need to make sure that I'm not being limited by not being able to identify when to let something go, when enough is enough. When enough is more our sacral. So it's something to really consider that there are so many influences at any given time on any given day, even if you are a projector being by yourself, you are still going to have the transits affecting you. So the message is make sure you get out in the world because it's an interesting place and that's where it's all happening. It is important for projectors to have time to themselves so that they can rinse and repeat their aura, their energetic system. Make sure that you are as clean and clear as you can be. But the game of life is out there. You are here to participate in it. You are not here to be a weak, vulnerable, poor projector pity party under the doona at home, avoiding the sacral energy out there. Because look, I've got it today anyway, whether I've got a generator next to me or not. So where can a projector go? Back to your definition. Every day when you're out there in the world, when you're playing on the physical plane, just remember which parts are yours and they are consistent for you. And don't try to hang your hat on the borrowed stuff because it's there for a day, it's there for a year, sometimes with a slow transit, it's there within a relationship, within a connection, but then it goes away. And take it from someone that has a split definition. I know what it's like to have this sense of codependency on things around me. That is the reality of a split definition. So you can kind of see the impacts of transits a little bit better and you learn to be a little bit more resilient to them. And so at the end of the day, life is constantly moving. So you may as well get into the stream, but to be able to swim effectively, you need your strategy and authority. And that's why Ra goes on about strategy and authority so much. So we want to make sure that we lean into our definition and that we are working with our strategy and authority to navigate life. And then we just get to be in the stream and enjoy the ride. And the mind personality finally is no longer driving the vehicle, is no longer being the authority, is no longer taking decision. It's actually doing what it's here for, and it just gets to watch the show. It gets to watch the scenery going by. And from there, we get to a space of correct outer authority. We can share with the other our unique perspective and experience. And that's where we want to reach. But it can't be done from the mind. It's a natural phenomenon that will come through when we stop operating through the mind space. And that's what deconditioning is. It's actually deconditioning our reliance on running our life through our mind and through the constructs, the belief systems, the programming, and the homogenization of our mind. We want to get out of that. The last thing that I want to speak to, which is a very valuable tool, I'm just going to move this down, a very, very valuable tool for every projector that does not get spoken about or shared enough is the primary health system. So the image that I've provided up the top of this slide here, this is the primary health system. And you have yours, we all have our own. The information we use within the primary health system can be found in what we call the sun and earth and the nodes of your design side, your unconscious, your vehicle side. So this is mine just for demonstration purposes. Now, what are all those numbers? This is advanced mechanics within the human design system. So the first number we have here, this 43, this is the gate. 0.5, this is the line. The lines go from 1 to 6. My 43 happened to be at line 5 when I was designed, which is 88 days prior to my birth. This is where the sun was. 6 is the color. 1 is the tone, and 3 is the base. And this is all really substructure mechanics that really give some greater detail and nuance the deeper that we go, specifically relating in this case to the primary health system and what we call internal and external determination. So this is a really simple but powerful hack that projectors should be aware of that is going to support your strategy and authority. And Ra said particularly for projectors, because we have a really tricky strategy. It's not an easy one. This wait for the invitation. If we're waiting for the invitation, it can be a long time between invitations. And so it's harder for us to educate ourselves through our strategy and authority in a robust way because we're sort of waiting for that to happen. Whereas for a generator, they don't need this as much. It's very easy to calibrate a generator because their response, they're about response, and there is always something to respond to. Life is constantly throwing them things to respond to. So their ability to move that muscle, to build that muscle of their strategy and authority is readily available every single day. For projectors, it's not. So if we can have an additional tool that is going to help us sort of sniff out our correct path in decision making, we want to be utilizing it. And it's a hack we can use through our body. So it relates to our cognition. This is not thinking and intellect. Cognition is a very specific word, and we'll go into this a little bit more in the next 2 days. Our health of the physical vehicle, longevity, which is part of that, and minimal resistance. As Ra said, all we are is bodies moving through space. So we want to have the least resistance possible to that journey. So internal determination. This is also known as your digestive type. The question here is, what or how are you taking in? Our internal determination gives us a map for the correct way that actually our cognition is designed to operate and be fed. It's also how our cognition takes in information, not just nutrition. So the prompt really is, what or how are you taking in? It's less about the food. It's more about how the food is presented, prepared, the place that you're eating, those kinds of qualities. It's less and less about the food itself. We all know nutrition. We need good nutrition. This is about specifically feeding your unique cognitive sense to support your authority, to be able to sniff out or sense what is correct for you. External determination is our environment. It's the external to the body. This is really important for our longevity, our wellness, and the correct others. This is another little nuance that is not spoken about. People think that the environment is just about where it's good to live, and that's not actually even the case. You don't have to be in your environment 100% of the time. The question here to ask is, it's about where is your body and who is it with? The environment that is correct for you will generally partner you with the correct others for you as well. So particularly for projectors, check out what your environment is and be extra observant when you are in those environments. Really important. The arrow direction, just quickly, these two arrows over here, we've got left or right facing. Again, this is my info, so I've got a bit of both. Lucky me. I've got a left internal determination arrow. Left is strategic, active. This relates to my cognition, how my brain works, not my mind, how my brain works. So as a left strategic active, I've got a brain that is really keyed into focused information. And that's why distraction's even worse for me. Focused, and it works in a very strategic way. And it's an active brain, meaning it does a lot of extra work. It needs a lot of extra calories and nutrition to fuel that work. However, this is what we call the seven-centered way. Left is seven-centered. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. The right arrow, which I have on my external determination over here, it's right facing. So I have receptive, passive body within my environment, also known as being an observer. I have a vehicle that is designed to really sit and watch what's going on in the activity within my environment rather than me getting busy doing the activities myself. That's how I actually am correct to operate. Whether I'm a projector or not, this is not projector specific, but I advise strongly that projectors get a little bit into this information for themselves so that you can actually use it as a supportive tool in your deconditioning and to really sharpen up that strategy and authority so that you are better calibrated to what is correct for you and that you're going to have more success and less bitterness and a lot less resistance in life and waste a lot less time. Projectors must break the dominance of the mind and the intellect to allow the vehicle to operate as it was designed. And PHS is a fantastic pathway that supports you in doing that. Did I just go backwards? I did. Okay. The nine-centered projector. We are going to get into this in more detail tomorrow. This is one of the key points for recalibration of projectors to what you were actually designed to be on this plane. And right now, we have been conditioned to operate in an old model, which is the seven-centered model. This means that what we're experiencing is bitterness and lack of success because we're guiding the old seven-centered way. We are here to guide the nine-centered way because we came into being at the same time as the nine-centered being came into being. So it only makes sense that we're designed to be the guides for that way, not the old way, for the new way. We are experiencing burnout working like generators because that's the seven-centered way. The seven-centered way is strategic living, fearing for our survival, seven-centered. That's not relevant for nine-centered beings. It's not what we're about. And so projectors are not about that either. That's why we're getting burned out. Homogenized projectors. This is also a seven-centered approach. Seven-centeredness was about homogenizing humans so that they were easier to manipulate and control. We are not here for that. That's why within the projector aura type, we have the most diverse range of authorities. We need to really be expressing our uniqueness even more so than the other types. That's what we're designed for. Lack of recognition first. Sorry, lack of self-recognition first. I've already mentioned this. We are so outward focused on the other and on how to win, how to be more, how to get more, that we're not recognizing that we need to recognize ourselves first. Self-motivated rather than other-centered. We are so focused on us, and it's not about us, it's about the other. And it's not correct for us to be thinking our way through life strategically. That is not what we're here for. We are not here to be thinking our way through. We are here to use our authority to guide ourselves through. So homework, we're almost done. Homework, you're going to receive an email. It will have the recording of this session. There will be a sacral cleansing audio. Please do this at least once a day. If you are sleeping with a sacral generator, please do it twice a day. Do it in the morning as well. And there will be a worksheet with some beautiful prompts for you to reflect on before our next session. So that is it. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you've received value. Make sure that you're doing your sacral cleansing twice a day. Stay in your retreat vibe, and I will see you for our session on recalibration tomorrow.